right, well, the smacketh was layeth downeth by the ratingseth last week, but this week, while we don't know the ratings, we know what happened on SmackDown for July 14th, which was just, it seems like just moments ago. I can't get it out of my head. Oh, I can't get it out of my head.
The problem is you can get the matches out of your head.
What, did they have matches?
See, there you go.
Did they have, wait a minute, let me check my notes here. I know there was some talking.
In the middle of the commercials.
The talking started.
No, in the middle of the commercials, sometimes they have matches.
Okay. Well, let's run through this real quickly then. Bianca Belair opened the program, skipping and twirling to the ring and saying stuff. And I really zoned out until Charlotte came out. I was okay, now I'll listen. Maybe they're going to fight. Who knows? Because they're in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's Flair country. They're wooing. They're wooing the woos. And basically, as well, what's about, you know, they woo the woos down in the Carolinas.
I did not know they woo the woos.
They woo the woos, baby. They're big wooers down there of wooing. So anyway, we know that Charlotte's allegedly a babyface. Bianca's allegedly a babyface. Oscar's turned heel here lately. Oscar's the champion. Charlotte came right in and got a shot that Bianca thought she should have. I mean, and, you know, all the kids in fucking fourth period were really upset about it. All the girls were picking sides. And anyway, Charlotte now picks Bianca to beat Oscar tonight and win the women's title so that she can be next. And basically, they just, Brian, again, they just stand at an unnatural position, opening themselves up to the camera because it looks good, and exchange snarky comments to each other while everyone's smiling, but the fake smile where I hate you, but we're doing the verbiage. And Bianca laughs at how much fun they're having out there doing that, and mentions that they can wrestle at SummerSlam, and they shake hands, and Charlotte woos her. Because, you know, they're big wooers down there in the Carolinas.
Yeah, they woo the woos, I hear.
They woo the woos. And that was it. They left. And that was 10 minutes of two women being fake nice to each other. Your comments.
Or as it's called, being a woman. I think Bianca's all right on the mic. I don't have a problem with her on the mic. I wondered where this was going. They wooed the wooers, or the wooers wooed the wooer. I don't know what the fuck is going on.
Hey, you know, sometimes when the wooer gets wooed, woo.
Didn't Stu Hart ask you? Diana Hart was a
that was a wooer. That's different than a wooer.
But you know what? It was also, I think more importantly, beyond whatever the women's program is, and we'll talk about it because it happens again later in the show, it was a different start. Last week, we started with the big angle. This week, we started with, not to take anything away from the women's division, but it's not as big as the Bloodline. Nothing is. So, a different way to hold the audience when you don't have Roman, I guess.
Well, a different way to hold the audience when two people come out and be fake nice to each other for 10 minutes and shake hands and woo. But then we came to the first match of the evening, which the bell rang for at 17 minutes into the show. Now we're going to see Purely Deadly every week, apparently. This is the new thing now. They bring in somebody and beat them to death until we can't stand them anymore, and then they bring in somebody else to do the same thing. But we couldn't stand them to begin with, so therefore, you know, except for the way they look, and the way they're dressed, and the way they talk, and the way they work, there's nothing but that bad about them. But they fought Sheamus and Ridge Holland. And they kick the shit out of these guys like they're jobbers to begin with. It works for a heel team like that if they're over first. But these guys are not and probably are never going to be. And they got a little heat on Ridge, and he just powered out of the heat and iceberg tagged old Sheamus, and they went to the Bowery Beach spot, and that was the break spot after 3 minutes, and then they came back, and they looked like fucking idiots. Did I mention these people? Purely Deadly?
It's the outfit more than anything. The top of the outfit more than anything. It's hard to take them seriously at all.
It's that and the retro, poison hair. I mean, Ricky and Robert, for God's sake, never had hair like this. And they do no tag team stuff. As individuals, their work is average and not different. A lot of punch and kick. And both their single and their team names suck. Elton John and Prince Michael. I don't fucking know who they are. Did you hear about right before Michael Jackson passed away, he and Elton John were going to do a duet for charity?
No. I did not hear about this, and I don't think you want to say it because I don't even know what you're going to say, and I'm already getting tense over here.
It was just that fun duet. Don't let your son go down on me.
There it is.
There it is.
By the way, I have some news off the wire here at the Wrestling News. Elton Prince of the tag team Pretty Deadly sustained a separated shoulder last Friday during Pretty Deadly's Smackdown match against Ridge Holland and Sheamus. According to a PW Insider report, Prince is expected to be out of action for the time being, although there is no word on whether he will require surgery or how long he may be sidelined.
Well, we hate to hear that. I didn't see anything that looked like all that bad, but then we see that stuff, we're immune to it now. But nevertheless, so back to this match. Simultaneous cold tags to Blondie and Ridge. Ridge Holland made a big comeback, and he's my favorite out of this whole bunch. If I could have had him in OVW with a better name, an actual gimmick, and some hair, I believe we'd have had something.
How much hair does he need?
He's got none. What is it? He's almost shaved, but not quite. Just close enough.
You just got mad at the other guys for too much hair.
Well, can't we all be just right about this thing? Is it have to be either fucking Telly Savalas or Edgar Winter?
This is wrestling. Seemingly, it seems like that. Yes.
No, Ridge Holland, if you put his headshot in a Fortune 500 stock brokerage company, he'd fit right in.
He lives in Staten Island. I'd believe it.
Anyway, so a bunch of back and forth, and somehow Ridge charged and hit his throat on the exposed turnbuckle, and Blondie hit a leg drop off the top rope, and Purely Deadly won. And there had been 7 minutes total of that match on the air at 30 minutes into the show.
And by the way, I wasn't saying he lives in Staten Island. I would say if you told me, based on his headshot, that he lived in Staten Island, I would believe it.
Oh, I thought he had moved to Staten Island to be closer to the office so he could go and suck up sometimes.
I don't know if that's the island I'd move to.
Anyway, so they did a Bloodline recap from the tribal court, last week. And that was one of the more entertaining parts of this program. And then Adam Pearce saw Charlotte. She was going to leave. She's happy. She's fine with what's going on. And then all of a sudden, Bayley and Io come in with the briefcase. And Charlotte turns around and says, you know what? I'll stay. So they're teasing dissension among the women. And speaking of dissension among the women, Zelina versus Bayley. I can't really break this down into too much of a critique because they went 100 miles an hour for 2 whole minutes and then it was over. Bayley won. Bing. Thank you for coming. I guess they had to get that pesky match out of the way because then Shotzi came up on the screen. And you will recall, Brian, or maybe you won't. I don't know whether you do or not. That the heels here had clipped some of Shotzi's hair off in a vicious backstage attack here last week or two, right?
Actually, I did not know that.
Well, they did. But now Shotzi was on the screen and she was talking about, you think that what you did gives you control over me. You saw this also. It was an over the, I at first thought they were parodying Britney Spears' meltdown. Was that the young lady that had a meltdown on the social media and shaved her head?
Well, there are many people who've had meltdowns on social media, as we have recently learned, but
And women and shaved their head, and they would be stars enough that I would know about it. How often does this take place?
Well, Britney Spears, when she shaved her head, I think that was like 2007 or something. She wasn't on social media. Well, that's the
only other time I remember.
You weren't on social media.
It was on television.
Yes, it was.
They sent her to a rubber room at the Puzzle Factory.
Well, she's making her own puzzles now.
Does she have hair?
Once again.
Well, yes. Shotzi don't, because she did. I mean, the performance was kind of like if it was in a horror movie or some type of dramatic independent film, it might have fit better. But I was getting the fact that she is trying to give us the impression that she is completely flipped her fucking lid and shaved her own head and was screaming that they're not going to control her. And that's what the dramatic part, the work part of this was. And we understand that the actual reasoning behind the head shaving was, I believe you mentioned to me off the air, that she is showing some solidarity to a member of someone in her family or social circle. Is this correct?
I believe what I read said it was her sister, but I may be mistaken, but I think it was her sister, yeah.
Who is undergoing health issue. And that's fine, but I, again, go back to what I said about Laurinaitis when Thank You, Fuck You, Bye was coined. Have a match. I thought that's what they were building to anyway, was they cut some of her hair in the back, so have a match, especially the girls. Hair versus hair, one must go. And make people believe somebody's going to get their head shaved. I would think if that was a featured event on some kind of major program, they might throw old Shotzi a bone because she's offering it up anyway. And you make some money and get yourself over off of it at the same time instead of doing it on a pre-tape on the screen. That was my thought.
I didn't like the style of it. I mean, if she's going to do this, if you're not going to do it in a match, and I got on Triple H years ago for not losing his hair in a match, just one day showing up at a crew cut, which is ridiculous. He was known for his hair. Yeah. But Shotzi did it. There was a camera in front of her, and then there was a camera on the side, and it was just camera cuts galore. And it was stylized as opposed to, here's a real moment. It was
obviously meant to be a dramatic movie scene rather than you actually believe what she was doing.
Yeah, it was like you were watching someone hype themselves up to fight Freddy Krueger or something. You're not going to drag me into the dream, Freddy!
All right, well, speaking of dragging us into a dream, we finally got through an hour of the program so that we could see the 9 o'clock hour. Actually, not even 8:57. They wanted Jey Uso in the ring so that they'd be all into the thing at 9 o'clock. And the crowd is chanting Usos and Usos and Usos. And Jay's talking about, because obviously Jimmy has been hospitalized by that vicious attack. Or medical facility. I'm not sure what they're saying these days. But Jay talked about, that he and Jimmy were twins. They'd been inseparable. And the way he was doing the promo, the crowd started whatting him. But for one of the few times I could remember, it worked. And not only that, but when he got to a serious point that didn't need the what, they backed up and worked with him. Did you notice that?
It was one of the greatest examples of mastery of the what chant, because they were going to do it, and it got louder and louder as he was building up, and then he went to the full sentence, as opposed to just throwing out a phrase.
Yeah, and it worked in the context of what he was saying. It didn't detract. It was helping him boost and we did this together, what, and that together, and or whatever the fuck, right? It worked somehow. So, I don't know, he was a very cunning linguist there. But anyway, being twins is what makes us special. If he's hurt, I'm hurt too. And I never thought that we'd be hurt by our own family. And he respects his whole family. He went through all of them. And there was another great what? My aunt, my uncle, whatever. What? But not Roman. Ooh. And I'm going to spank my little brother Solo. Ooh. And then, of course, here comes right at 9 o'clock. My name is Paul Heyman. You know, could it have been, I don't know about his health and his cholesterol, but could it have been the best thing for him that he is ballooned to the massive body weight that he possesses now from when he was just a little shit when he was, in the late 80s when he was Paulie Dangerously, because it's made him slow down. Because he's got such gravitas now with his measured way of speaking and his command of the language. Whereas before, the psycho yuppie was like, "Rah, rah." Just remember, fucking, what was it, 35 years ago, I outweighed him by at least 25 pounds.
He was never a small guy, though, once he was an adult.
I don't think in 88, when we were working with each other, he didn't weigh 200 pounds. Couldn't have. He was a puny little thing, probably but 195. 195-pound weakling.
You could body slam him?
Are you fucking kidding? I never even tried. It wasn't that it wasn't that I couldn't slam him if he'd go up. I wasn't going to herniate myself with him not being able to figure out how to go up. I could pick Crusher Khrushchev up, Barry Darso, for a body slam when in Mid-South when I weighed 200 and he weighed 295 because he knew how to go up. I wouldn't slam him, but I could get him up and hold him for a second. I don't know if I could have got Paul 6 inches off the fucking ground.
Because he wouldn't know how to go up, and
no,
not to play spoiler, he still doesn't know how to bump, but let's go.
No, that's I was just saying that's why I said he's the only guy in the business I've ever been able to blow up, even back then, and he's the only guy that I've ever worked with that I had to fucking lead and was the experienced veteran in the fucking situation. Anyway, so Heyman interrupted, and he and Solo come out, and they say they're there to enforce the peace. They're just going to get in and have a conversation. And I can't do justice to what Paul says and the way he says it, but the story is that, he's telling Jay, you know how this whole thing works. Next week, because Jay has challenged Roman. So next week, Jay and Roman will meet face to face as it has been done by your father and his father before him and his father before him, the whole Island Dynasty thing, to discuss the rules of engagement. This has been handed down through the generation. This is classic Paul Heyman booking also, too, by the way. This is fucking great. So as long as he's not in charge of the checkbook, or you don't have to get him on the phone. And Paul is playing mind games with Jay. He's telling him at one point he sounds more like a tribal chief every day, but then he turns it on him. What happened to Jimmy is your fault. You're the one that opposed Roman. You wanted to lead the family. And then Paul tells Jimmy out there in TV land, you know it's Jay's fault. Will you ever forgive him? He tells Jay, will your father ever forgive you? And it just, again, this is fucking Peyton Place for you senior citizen soap opera fans out there.
And Jey Uso's facial reactions to everything, to every name that's being said.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And, and they're sticking to the universe that they've created where this bloodline, this family, the honor, the elders, the tribal chiefs, the wise men, it's all fucking preposterous. And it works because they've built it and they didn't just shit on details in it or just make shit up as they want to. It sounds legitimate. Anyway, so then Solo tells Jay that he's never going to forgive him, and Jay fucking pickles him. And they get in a fight, and Jay dumps Solo, and then he stalks Paul. And the only thing I know they need to milk, but I don't know that Jay has ever been in that position before on how to, when he's really been over and how to fucking stalk somebody that's really got heat, but he needed to make more advancement. He needed to cover more ground. He just kind of got there and you could tell he was not getting close enough to where when he got cut off, it needs to be the rug pulled out from under people, right? If he'd have just slowly turned and one foot in front of the other all the way across to Paul, and by the time he laid hands on Paul's jowls, there's Solo. Oh my God, the people they didn't need to change their shorts. But anyway, So Solo from behind. And Jay gets back on Solo, and that's where I wrote on my notes, Paul slides in, but I don't know if that really does it justice. But poor Paul, as best he could, it's not easy for Paul anymore when he's off his feet, right? To get anywhere, because I think he's laying on his stomach, his arms don't reach the ground. But anyway, he kind of wallers under the bottom rope and stands up, and there comes Jay with the super kick, and Paul, you can see him, he's doing the same thing he did 35 years ago. If you try to throw a punch at him,
wincing.
He winces. He's good. Good king winces a lot. He winced and boom, and he crumpled to the ground. You could have fucking heard a mouse pissing on cotton when he hit the mat because it was like an Ox Baker rolling bump. But the people went crazy because he never falls down. And then a big bump on Solo, and it grabbed a chair and, whacked Solo with it, and the heels bailed out, and there we go and next week, we know there's going to be some shit take place because they're going to decide the rules of engagement between Jay and Roman. So
for SummerSlam.
So we got that going for us. What did you think of this whole dramatic rendition?
This was tremendous. If I was making a best of videotape for friends to trade around or send around, this would have been on it for this week. Jey Uso, I said it to you before, he's the most real guy. I'm not saying everything's real. He comes across real. He looks real. He sounds real. He reacts real. And the only thing, I agree with what you said. And as you were saying it, I was picturing it, him walking across the ring the way he did. But the way I thought of it as it was happening was, it's a big move beyond Roman. It's a big move family-wide for him to strike Heyman. So maybe that took a second or two for him to, okay, I'm doing this, and do it. That's the only thing I could think of. But Heyman was fantastic. I mean, where he was saying, your mom won't forgive you. Just going through the whole family.
And there's a bunch of them.
It's tremendous. And, the main event Jay thing, there was a big sign there, dead center, as it was happening. And he's going to get the main event with Roman. And I think he has stood out for, a while now as just maybe a breakaway star from this thing eventually. This was a fantastic segment. No Roman, but you got the big moment of the Heyman bump, and Heyman never bumps.
And Russ never sleeps, and Heyman never bumps.
Well, you never see Heyman get hit. I guess I should put it that way.
Actually, people are afraid, because if you get up close enough to him, he's got such a gravitational pull around his equator.
Stop it.
But anyway, so, hey, I'm fucking older than him and I'm in better physical condition. I'm never going to let him forget it.
How about a rematch?
I don't know about that. He might hurt me working with me. Fuck, at this point, if he fell on me alone. All right, moving on in the show, they had a four-way. And let me see if I get this correct, Brian. The four-way here was to determine the winner of this four-way to advance to the winner of a four-way next week in the finals to determine a challenger to the United States Championship currently held by Austin Theory.
Well, they decided to turn over one segment a week to Tony Khan.
Well, apparently it was this one. No, actually, I don't see Tony's fingerprints on this because the fucking thing didn't take very long. He would have implored them to go as long as they possibly could. But anyway, it was AJ Styles against Butch, against Escobar, against Waller. And Waller looks like a college freshman on the lacrosse team wearing boxing trunks that somehow wandered into catering and got booked. Or perhaps there were so many people in the match, he just kind of got in line as they were walking out there and nobody noticed. There have been a few times guys have gotten in battle royals that way. And they went 2 minutes to the break. And then when they came back, I said, how can I critique this when it doesn't make any sense and it's the same shit they always do anyway? And finally, AJ was about to win when suddenly on the screen that he was conveniently facing as he was about to give the finishing move to some fucking body. Karrion Kross is on the screen, has beaten up apparently Gallows and Anderson. So how the fuck did he manage to do these two giants? So AJ, of course, freezes, drops his opponent, and leaves the ring so he can be beaten up in the entranceway. And Escobar splashed Waller 1, 2, 3. Did I miss any of the finer points?
No, and you're not wrong to point out how stupid it is for AJ to do that. But when you really think of the other option is he sees that and then he just shrugs and goes back to the match.
Well,
all right,
he's 10 seconds away from winning the thing, and it's going to take him 45 seconds to get backstage at least to whatever set that they have their prearranged muggings at. So what's 10 seconds fucking difference? Win the match, then run. I mean, Gallows and Anderson, again, it's not like we're talking about, the Olsen twins or something.
The Olsen twins.
Some defenseless children or females or weak people. It's fucking Gallows and Anderson. It's one guy. What did Scarlett take out Anderson so that he could have Gallows all to himself?
She distracted them. That's what she does. That's her role.
Well, they were distracted all the way down on the fucking floor, groaning in pain.
See, it worked.
That's some heavy-duty distraction. All right. Moving along, it was time, as a matter of fact, overdue, that we see L.A. Knight. Yeah. And now they've figured it out. He doesn't, all he has to do is come out. They just sent him out to the entranceway. He got a huge reaction. He cuts a promo. They chant L.A. Knight constantly. And he just says, everybody's using my name to get news or get views and clicks or whatever. I'm the best decision the WWE ever made. And I'm coming for Theory's title. Call me megastar. Call me GOAT. You will call me champ. But you doesn't got to call me Johnson. And
don't call me Eli Drake.
Yeah, and whatever you do, don't call me Max Dupree. But he came out, did a promo. He's going to win the fucking U.S. title. He does his thing. L.A. Knight, and he goes back. That's all he needs. And it's a rib at this point. Maybe they finally, are realizing it now.
Yeah, do you think that's what this is? They've kind of slowed down, but they're still, again, he wasn't on that MSG show, but the YouTube clip of the Hit Row thing went, next to the tribal court, that was the next highest views, and it was a phenomenal view count. This here, it was at the end of the show, so you haven't seen him all show. He comes out, the people explode, he doesn't really do much. Do you think maybe they recognize, look, this guy is getting a reaction everywhere. His merch is moving. We've seen that. He's one of the biggest merch movers now in the company in terms of just shirts. And by the way, his shirts don't look that good. Imagine when he gets good shirts.
Yeah.
They're really going to sell.
If he can move bad shirts, he'll goddamn move good shirts. I'd rather wear a good shirt than a bad shirt any day.
Could you see, because again, it still is under Vince's control, no matter what they want to say, could you see them saying, all right, we recognize something here, pal. We're going to slow things down and try to figure out how to get you figured into a better role.
Well, I think that's hopefully what they're doing here. And, that's exactly what they should do. And he doesn't need to beat everybody. As we've mentioned, he's a wrestling type of heel where he can do a job every once in a while, get a little heat after, come back with the microphone or whatever. He doesn't have to go on a long undefeated streak, but he's certainly got to be, presented as competitive with the main event guys and, also not being beaten all the time on television because that takes part of the aura away after a while.
See, that's the thing right there. If during a Bloodline segment or during a Cody Rhodes thing on Raw with Brock or, what other main eventers there are, if that music hit and he came out there and he was treated on everyone else's level, it would work and people are ready for it. But you can't have any more things where the music hits and he comes out there and he takes a powder.
Or he's talking to fucking Otis and Shoosh Boy or whatever.
Yeah.
It's past that. They better recognize Anyway, I was barely able to recognize what was going on after this because we watched the whole show to see the Bloodline. But the main event for the women's title, the aforementioned Bianca Belair against Asuka. And basically, this is the main event. This is for the women's championship. Bayley and Io come into the arena waving tickets. They're going to sit in the front row with tickets, that old deal. They go 90 seconds in the match. And then Charlotte comes into the arena with a ticket. And she's going to sit down, and they go to the break. When they come back, by this time, they've only got fucking 7 minutes on the air. And they go another 3 more minutes or so, and then Bianca gives Asuka her finish on the announce desk, and that still looks awkward to me and not an impressive bump that is worth the potential for fucking something to go wrong. And Bayley and Io hop the rail, and Charlotte hops the rail and boots Bayley, and then tells Bianca she's trying to help her there. But Io posts Charlotte and shows Bianca the case, like, I'm going to cash in. And Charlotte goes to spear Io, but Io moves, and Charlotte spears Bianca and gets fucking somebody disqualified. The referee rang the bell. I've lost track at this point of who that might be getting disqualified. And then Io knocked out Charlotte with the case and threw Asuka in the ring. And Bayley was trying to tell the referee that they wanted to cash in, but Asuka blew the mist in Bayley's face and then grabbed her belt and left before they could cash the case in. So it's another case of no case being cashed. Okay?
Yeah, here's the problem with the Bloodline not being at the end of the show. I was kind of zoned out by this point. After Charlotte jumped the rail and was yelling, "I'm trying to help you!" I was like, oh, okay. And then when more people got involved, I was zoned out.
All righty. But that was Smackdown. They ought to just change the name of the show. WWE Bloodline. All righty then. Well, speaking of saving time, everybody should save up some time this week so that they can peruse the various podcasts that are proffered on the podcasting platform known as the Arcadian Vanguard Podcast Network.
That's right. Thank you very much. You can get information about all the shows on Twitter at Superpodcast or on Facebook at facebook.com/Arcadian Vanguard. A few notes, of course. Every day, wake up and get the wrestling news for free. Your free daily wrestling newscast. Get it at thewrestlingnews.com or look for Arcadian Vanguard's The Wrestling News wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Every single day, get all the news, concise and to the point. No opinion, no conjecture, no fee, just the wrestling news. Check it out today, thewrestlingnews.com. Also want to make mention, as we did at the top, and in case you missed it, all feeds for The Experience and the Drive-Thru have been updated. The latest shows are now there. The newest shows will be put there. Everyone can go to bed now. Everything's okay.
Go to bed, Georgie.
Want to make mention of this week's episode of Shut Up and Wrestle with Brian Solomon. His guest, Johnny Photo, John Giamundo. At least that's how I read it here. I hope I pronounced that correctly. Former chief WWE photographer. He talks about the infamous Divas shoots, hanging out with the NWO, staying out at Kevin Dunn's shot, and so much more. Hear it today, suawpod.com, or look for Shut Up and Wrestle with Brian Solomon, wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And of course, the 605 Superpodcast, The Mothership! Go through the archive today at 605pod.com, wherever you find your favorite podcast. The 605 Superpodcast, The Mothership.